Thank you so much for staying with us, everyone. The takeaways, the underlying factor, what perhaps some people are already suspecting that there may be a cover-up, especially when you see the GMD and the Minister of State, Dr. Ebe Kachiku, coming together, and they say they've reconciled these issues. In the minds of a lot of Nigerians, they want transparency, and they are saying, reconcile yourselves, but reconcile the issues also. And that's why we've brought the two gentlemen in our Abuja studios tonight to make sense of all these issues, and we can give you a point of direction. We have Dr. Mogaji, who is an energy expert, and Mr. Eze Onyekwere is the lead director at the Center for Social Justice. Thank you so much, gentlemen. You were talking about the takeaways, Mr. Onyekwere, before we went on that break. And one of the takeaways that a lot of people will like you to expatiate and clarify is perhaps if there is anything that has gone wrong, legally speaking and procedurally, what can we take away from all of this situation?
Great. The procurement of a loan into the tune of about $3 billion is not purely an operational issue. There is no way in corporate governance that the board of a company that is procuring a loan of $3 billion in Nigeria should not be involved, should not approve. And ideally, if you are taking a memo to the Federal Executive Council or the President, it is not in the position of a GMD. It is in the position of the supervising minister, and the president, who was overall minister, was not around. It was supposed to be the supervising minister who should take that memo either to the acting president or the Federal Executive Council. And in this case, this was not done. So we need to strengthen that. And one of the major takeaways is the issue of the Public Procurement Act. Section 1 of it talked about the constitution of the National Council on Public Procurement, which is part of the challenges we are having. It's not been done. If this has been done, maybe today we will not be discussing all these issues. We are going into the Act to implement Section 20, to talk about tenders board, to talk about procurement procedures, leaving out Section 1 of the Act. The second one is that I don't think that if the National Assembly should be asked to, oversee a loan or to give approval, that you should commit an NNPC to such huge amount of money. And that huge amount of money will reflect on the profitability, which will also reflect on the amount to be remitted to the Federation account for sharing by the 3 tiers of government. Not one person should have that duty. It should be between the DMO, the National Assembly, and the President. So we need reforms in all these things. And we need to clarify properly what the board should do and what the operational system should do in an NNPC. And finally, and most importantly, this is the exact time a watertight case has been made for the petroleum industry bill in all its ramifications, whether it's the fiscal structures of the bill, whether it's the community relations, whether it's the administrative relations. We need to once and for all lay this thing to rest and stop this impecunious idea of the legislature staying for 4 years, promising nothing, promising they will do a work on the bill, delivering nothing, the executive standing aloof, not bringing agenda, not bringing executive bills. I had expected the president to submit executive bills, call Oyegu, who is the party chairman, since his party is in control of the legislature, tell them to work together and deliver these bills on the reform of the petroleum industry in the next 2, 3, 4 months, and let him sign it and separate it. Rather than this aloof leadership, you stay aloof and say it's the duty of the legislature. Where has that got us? There is a leader, there is a president, the buck stops at his table. He should lead from the front.
All right, let me go to the energy expert here. Dr. Omongaji, tell us just how corrupt is the NNPC? We've heard a lot of corruption issues linked to that agency, that parastatal, under that ministry. And one may be wondering, the government in power right now says it will make sure that it sanitizes that industry. But from what we see today, do you think there is a step in that direction?
Well, let me first of all refer to the section of the letter you quoted by the Honorable Minister, which basically reminded the President that he was brought in to implement reforms that will sanitize the industry. And gladly so, when he was basically running the NNPC in addition to his duty as Minister of State, he initiated these reforms. These reforms were targeted at giving NNPC autonomy. And the word autonomy in oil industry means that the agency will be free from the type of bureaucracy my learned colleague here is outlining. It's not a corporation that will go and start following budgetary processes and memos and procurement based on our acts, as a procurement act. In NNPC, there is a procurement tender board. And in NNPC, there is the board. And in NNPC, there are various approval limits. And specifically on this transaction, if you look at what NNPC said we will get from these transactions after full implementation of the partnership, from the first transaction between NNPC and Chevron, an anticipated $7 billion is basically expected from the deal. And from the Shell NNPC deal, an expected $9 billion is expected from this deal. This cooperation, it's a mega money cooperation. So when you talk about the amount you're talking about in oil industry is really not too big. When you say President go to get 5.5 billion in National Assembly, that is basically budgetary funding deficits. But NNPC is supposed to be dealing with global financial players at the level they are. And that is exactly why the autonomy is required. So that this type of argument will not arise when NNPC actually say, oh, we have signed an agreement between a global player.
Dr. Mogaji, the kind of, if I may quickly butt in to clarify an issue, the kind of autonomy that you're talking and you are looking at for the NNPC, is that such an autonomy that will not mind the presence of the board that is supposed to be headed by the chairman of the board that is now the Minister of State?
I'm saying, remember in my first discussion, I did mention that the NNPC Act did not preclude the president being the substantive chairman of the board from acting on behalf of the board. It did not. I mean, there is nowhere in the NNPC Act that says that and this is exactly the lacuna that if there is a takeaway, I think we need to focus on. From operational point of view, setting up a Minister of State, delegating chairmanship of a board, and giving him responsibility to run the industry from policy point of view, given GMD the operational responsibility of GMD in NNPC, and having a Minister of Petroleum held by the President, who is also a President, and in this particular instance, he was away. He actually handed over power to
let me allow Dr. Mogaji, let me allow Mr. Onyekwere just in about 30 seconds to round up the conversation. If you are the president, for example, Mr. Onyekwere, to clear the air from an agency that has been linked with a lot of corruption in the past and a government that says, I want to fight corruption, what would you do on a day like this?
The president should divest himself of being the Minister of Petroleum. He could as well have been the Minister of Agriculture or Transport or Water Resources or anything, and hand it over to a trusted ally who he thinks has the utmost integrity, and then he should pursue a proper Petroleum Industry Reform Act and submit it to the National Assembly and follow it up through the party structure. That's why we have the Senate President who is from his party. That's why we have a majority leader. That's why we have the party chiefs, and agree with them and let them deliver this bill so that we get away with all this controversy, which is unending. And simply saying, oh, the president is a substantive minister and lashing on everything to him at a time it is clear the president could not have acted or taken a decision is not helping his good name, his integrity, which Nigerians vowed for when they voted him in. So the president should come forward, clear his name, and make sure he expedites reform in the sector.
All right, that's about what we can give you tonight on the program, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us. Dr. Mogaji there, an energy expert, and Mr. Eze Onyekwere, the lead director at the Center for Social Justice. Many thanks, gentlemen, for being part of the show tonight. And that's our show. Many thanks for being part of it, everyone. I'm Sean Kimbaloe. Bye for now.